Mr. Tony Quinn, CEO of Tank Bank International. Welcome, Tony, from Singapore. His Excellency Sharif Habib Al Adwadi, Director General of Fujairah Free Zone. Neil Robertson Jones, Head of Corporate Banking, National Bank of Fujairah. And Martin Hijbor, Business Development Manager of the Port of Fujairah. Let's welcome all four to turn on your cameras and to turn on your microphones. And we will kick off this section where we're looking at the question of what hard infrastructure should Fujairah prioritize to attract more foreign direct investment. We've talked a lot about Sharif hollering there, the Bitcoin sell. I think that's what that was. We've talked a lot about the soft architecture. We've talked a bit about.
I just tuned into the Gulf Intelligence Fujairah focus.
Mike Muller's mic'd up. De-mic him, that would be good. So we've talked about the benchmarks. We've talked about the need for more transparency, more commitment to sustainability and such things. Here we want to talk about hard infrastructure, which obviously Fujairah has been very good at over many decades, and what it should do in order to direct foreign direct investment. So that's the question for this session. Let's start out with Tony Quinn, CEO of Tank Bank, giving us his 2-minute introduction.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks to Foy's and all the supporters of the panels that we've had today, and thanks again, Sean, for ever supporting the region and doing a great job every day on these panels. We really enjoy them.
Thank you.
So my background really, I mean, if I go back to Fujairah, the first time I went to Fujairah was 1997, 98. I went to the opening of what was the Van Omeren terminal, which is why I've got no hair. That's why I'm so old. In those days, of course, there wasn't very much there. Mike's Metro refinery was just up the road, and the now Vopak terminal was just opened in a small way. Of course, now that's the bigger of the terminals, and there wasn't really much else there. I think in terms of infrastructure, I don't think anyone envisaged the scale of what we have today in Fujairah. And, on the ground today, there's 11 or so terminals now there, where even 5 to 10 years ago, there was only 2. So we've had a dramatic increase in build, in steel, in construction. All of it has been done outside of the port in the Foy's area by independent investors. Rolling on to 2012, my second involvement in Fujairah was sitting actually in Mike Muller's office, because it used to be Concord Energy's office. We're talking with Naz Musrazin on the concept of actually building FOT, which became the terminal that's actually beside me or behind me on the picture. So that, and this has always been investment money. At that time, we looked at coming in at an investment grade product with just terminals, using their building the terminals for their own product and their own trading operations. And that was particularly what was going on at the time, with the exception of Vopak. What has happened is it's become much more of an independent area and port. And then, the port infrastructure has to keep up with that. And of course, that dramatic growth that we talked about over the last few years, it can only be really surpassed by the infrastructure that the team has put into place at the port, with MM1 and MM2. My question probably on infrastructure, and it's probably one for the team to take back, is really if you have the matrix manifold system in 2 parts, I suppose if we really knew how big the whole facility was going to be in a few years ago, we probably would have built one big system to make it much, much easier to manage. And so now we have a situation where if you want to get into the VLCC line, you've got to go to MM2, you can't go through MM1, and the crossover lines are always busy. So in terms of sort of infrastructure, if we looked at the port facilities, I would say that's probably one of the main ones, to sort of look at how we can develop the customer service angle there.
Which is part of the survey question in the last session, which got the top vote, more flexibility in the port.
Exactly, and I think that's an important one. I think that William and Martin and the guys are doing a good job on the customer service angle, but I still think there's more work to do there. As I always tell our teams in either FOT or GTIP. I mean, we've got 1.5 million cubic meters on the ground here. We put the first crude oil tanks up in Fujairah back in 2015. They were open to the market. We haven't seen a big activity in crude. The tanks have been used for other products during the majority of that time. So like everyone else, I'm interested to see the impact of the crude coming in through the facility, and particularly this connection into the port as well from ADNOC, which is an interesting one, and how that's going to flow through. Because, you know, again, if you're going to put a lot of volume of crude suddenly through the lines, are we ready to handle that? That's probably my question. And where's that crude going to go? And then probably picking up one of the further questions from one of the previous speakers on the panel about crude movement. Myself and Mike Muller were bantering there about where the storage is, because we were saying there isn't actually any independent crude storage in Singapore, and Mike quite rightly pointed out, apart from on floaters. But in terms of land storage, there's nothing in Singapore. In terms of crude storage around the world, crude storage only works if you're going point to point. So if you're actually taking it from a refinery down a line onto a ship and selling it, that's your best avenue to make money as a trader. You know, I was a trader for 6-7 years. I wouldn't dream of storing crude anywhere else other than putting it on a ship and selling it, unless there was some good strategic contango reason for doing that.
Right.
But, you know, you don't want that sort of volume sitting around empty, waiting for a dip in the market or a blip in the market. So, so infrastructure stuff, I think certainly customer service, infrastructure around the flow of products, very important. We have a lot of berths at the port. The guys have done an absolutely magnificent job, and I certainly since. So
you seem to be emphasizing soft rather than hard there, which is obviously interesting. There is a lot of hard. Let's get in Sharif Habib El Wadi to give us his opening thoughts on this question. Sharif, you're on mute, Sharif. Sorry again. The phrase of the century. You're on mute.
Sorry, I
gotta get the t-shirt before this pandemic is over. We gotta get the t-shirt. You're on mute. Yep.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for your great efforts, yourself and your team, Gulf Intelligence. Again, you are taking us to different horizons.
Shukran.
It's good to see some friends. Tony, if you remember me, I worked with you early stage at Vopak, pioneers, I could say. I'm glad to see some bankers there. The two other sessions, thank you again. It was very educational, very, very promising, and very, educating. The questions today, I want to look at it at the broader, and I'm also grateful for your input 2 days ago to how to prepare this. I think everybody is agreeing that we need things to be done. But in my belief, I have seen, and I think most of us being witness, that Fujairah, when there is a requirement to respond, it is easy. And how can prove it? Let's say we have developed the port of Fujairah, the deepest port in Fujairah. When it required, within 1 year, 2 years, it was on work and it was delivered. Voice was delivered. So what means that? Means that we need to think a little bit ahead. At least not 50 years, not 20 years, but at least 5 to 7 or 8 years. That's what we need to do. And that's what also Mr. Tony was saying. I think we need to draw a map, a collective map, and every efforts are single, individuals. There is a great success at the port of Fujairah, there is no doubt. There is great success of Foy's. We have some other sectors. So I think the Emirate requires more than infrastructure is hard, also to think in all aspects. I mentioned to you the other day, we have gained a lot of mileage on your efforts that you're bringing SP Plats, data, transparency. So we're missing, first of all, a great and a strong and very solid and very transparent platform to get information to people, to access to information. And due to that, we are behind in proper marketing, which Captain Ali was saying. So we need more to hit the market. I agree with Captain Mousa. We need more trading than maybe this. So it means that we are lacking very strongly on a proper marketing, benchmarking Fujairah as a total FDI hub. We need to do, this is number one. So we need to go out today, everybody. The efforts are individual. Sean, you picked up the port, you picked up the voice, you picked up everything. We have a better sound than 5-6 years ago. So we need a greater marketing plans. We need to have investment attraction like other Emirates have done. If not every Emirate, every country, at least every major cities. We need to make more tie-ups. So that's one. The second part, sir, I think the roads and everything is intact, but we need to also enhance other facilities. Today, even I think it's important for the government of Fujairah, and this is a study I was honored to work on it for the strategic plan of United Arab Emirates for 50 years. I think we need to develop the appetite for the government of Fujairah itself to be ready to take some JVs. Why? Not necessarily 50%, 70%, or 30%. We're talking even 5 to 10% actual. And that gives a lot of confidence. Confidence to investors, confidence to people coming. And then one more confidence that we are also facing today with Mr. Robertson, Jones will answer. The banking, we're having a severe difficulties with the new system. So with the fishy. So when the government's involved, the banking becomes easy, the involvement. So we need to enhance. We were talking about Port of Fujairah today. With my respect, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but we need to have more supporting facilities, receiving, let's say, sludges, receiving the tank blasting, cleaning. These, and you cannot take just the pearl and throw the shells. I think we need to do that. That will give us more horizon, more sustainability. So the infrastructure one we need to do more surrounding. Maybe the port is today well done. We need to Port of Fujairah Airport. You raised the question. We realize today the government has to bring an airline, whether they have to sponsor it, and that allows us to do more, be more easy. We have a lack of population. 270,000. You need to enhance. So we need touristic place, more hotels, more services. So I think this is the hard one. We need the appetite of the government to be involving itself in taking projects, involvement, maybe 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever. There are some businesses that businessman will not do. The government has to do. The way we lay roads, Sean. You've been into it.
Yeah.
So this is how I see it. I think we need more of a legislation. Sorry,
thank you. Let's bring in the banker, given that they're so popular. Neil Robertson Jones, head of corporate banking, National Bank of Fujairah. Your thoughts, Neil, on the answer to this question: what hard infrastructure should Fujairah prioritize to attract more foreign direct investment? Welcome your opening 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Well, as
quote unquote 2 minutes.
As a bank, I'm obviously going to talk about National Bank of Fujairah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've been very proud to support the operations and development of Fujairah Port, where we've liaised with the port and their customers in relation to the development of new infrastructure, so jetties, jetty loading, unloading, tanking, piping, etc. In addition to the Fujairah Oil Industry Zone, where the bank supports the developing storage, which you're suggesting we have too much of, and refining capacity, helping Fujairah continue their consolidation at its position as one of the primary three global destinations for marine bunkering and storage. One quick point going to Sharif in relation to infrastructure. We are actually, as a bank, doing a considerable amount in relation to the hospitality side, and we would be supportive of new petrochemicals possibly coming in, and that could be supported with additional fuels of the LNG operating, being introduced. Okay, but that's just an aside, just for that one point, and I'll come back to that. Okay. Obviously, the launch of the fourth refinery, Bruges Energy, that's going to start 25,000 barrels a day, but it also has a significant phase 2 to follow. And also Ekamar, its current capacity of 20,000 barrels per day. They are projecting an extension to triple that by 2023. Whether they might delay that, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Okay, but obviously that complements the existing refining capabilities of PTTI and Uniper. Okay, so MBF in relation to its support to infrastructure, we have provided significant financing in relation to storage tank and refinery construction and development expansion, bunker suppliers and traders, support services, as well as OSVs, within the port and the vessels that are docking at the port and the
Okay. All right. Thank you, Neil. Let's, before bringing in Martin, bring in the survey question and see what the room thinks about this topic. If Irene, we could bring that up. What hard infrastructure should Fujairah prioritize to attract more foreign direct investment? A, we heard airport mentioned by His Excellency Sharif, a refinery, a full-scale refinery. C, floating storage regasification unit. There had been talk in the past that we would have an onshore liquefaction unit, but in this case, the new solution of a floating FSRU, as they're known. or D, reclaim more land, which of course is very important infrastructure in Fujairah, or none of the above? So what's your choice? What hard infrastructure should Fujairah prioritize to attract more foreign direct investment? Welcome the view of the room, and then we will take it. I'd like to get Martin's chance to give us some of his thoughts about what he's heard this morning, because of course a lot of things, Martin, end back at the port. Tony was talking a little bit there about customer service. The last session was talking about greater flexibility and efficiency. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I think also Tony was very much relating to the hardware, the infrastructure. Yes, I think last year we already mentioned also during IP week that we we see in the coming 2 to 3 years the need to further invest. I think we're reaching a point where we still have room to grow, but we're reaching the maximum probably sooner than later. And as mentioned various times by my colleagues, we like to be ahead as well of the market. So I think by this year, I can see us making certain the investment decisions to further grow the infrastructure. So with that, potentially 1 or 2 additional jetties. The interconnectivity between matrix manifold 1 and 2, as mentioned by Tony, definitely is high on our radar to add additional lines to ensure the trading between the terminals can flow at the same time. We can get to all our jetties because the interconnectivity lines are used for both. So to enhance the trading, to increase the service levels, yes, we definitely see the need, and it's coming soon. We also at the same time challenged to get as much out of our assets as possible, really sweat the assets. Also work with the terminals, what can they do on their side? There have to be 2 ways, dialogue and help each other. At the end of the day, we all serve the same customer. It's the customer inside the terminals, of course, that is the market, right? They bring the volumes. So it's very important that both the terminals as the port provide the service levels, stay competitive, be ahead of the market. So I think it's coming sooner than later, Sean, that we will increase our capacity in the port.
Let's get the survey result and get some views on that, Tony. So where the room thinks the focus should be, 36% popping out refinery just ahead of a FSRU. What are your thoughts, Tony? Not necessarily maybe for your own business in particular, but in the context of where you think Fujairah could go with infrastructure to attack more FDI. Tony. And you're muted again, sorry.
Sorry about that. I was coughing earlier on, so that was too embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, look, the refinery, I sort of agree with Lars on the last panel. I think we've got to be careful we don't overdo this. This is just our view, my view, if you like. But, if we actually put too much refining capability in there, we could have a bottleneck problem. And I think, Martin and William will definitely agree with me on that. The refineries that we have aren't really refineries, they're topping units as such, but they're there, VTTI, Uniper, Ecomar, and so on, and the new Bruges one. I mean, that probably is enough of a flow in terms of the products that are going to come off those lines. Now, if you're going to come up with something new as a refinery, it's got to be something a little bit novel and a bit more than just producing fuel oil or refining crude. I see the place as a crude net export market. I don't see it as an import into refining. I actually sort of thought the airport would be more interesting, only for the fact that we could open a jet fuel line and then start doing some jet movements through the port and use up some of the tankage that way, which would be quite productive. I don't have a view on the floating regen vessels, but maybe someone else might want to talk about that. That's not really my game.
The regasification, the idea of having LNG into the mix. Yeah. Neil, your thoughts on that, and I would welcome your thought on are we doing enough as an ecosystem, both individually as companies or institutions, to be more capital access friendly, that to make the job easier for bankers to finance projects and infrastructure and commercial development?
Well, I mean, first thing I would say, obviously, the effects of COVID-19 have hit the banks quite significantly. You've seen quite a few banks leaving the market on the shipping side and also on some of the energy side and on the trading side. One thing I would say is NBF remains committed to energy and marine. On the FSRU side, I'm slightly biased because I financed them on my previous bank. I think it would be a great opportunity for Fujairah to have the LNG line coming in, energy being shipped in and being processed at an FSRU. I mean, they're very flexible because they can store it. If you're like in a contango, like you said before, you can store it or you just pump it straight out. It's a new cleaner, which is obviously in line with the UAE's mandate for cleaner energy. And it's very efficient. If you want to reduce it or increase it, you simply swap out the vessel for a larger one or a smaller one. And at the end of the day, if there's a better market somewhere else, you simply switch on the engine and float it around to the next location. So I think it's as an alternative additional fuel source for Fujairah, it could assist in the development of some light industrial. It could help in foyers. It could provide electricity or power to Fujairah itself. I don't think it would be sustainable to do Northern Emirates, but that's already catered for anyway. But I think it's definitely a positive development and something.
Probably just to comment on that. I mean, I think one of the problems with LNG at this stage is it's not still a proven major fuel alternative. There's still a lot of things out there. If it's going into grid and power supply, I sort of agree with you there, Neil. If you're going to use it and try to put it into the fuel market, you're going to actually deteriorate the actual market that we're famous for in Fujairah, which is being the second largest fuel oil hub in the world. So there's some positives and negatives. I know what you mean about this. Actually, my son actually is the operations manager for one of the largest gas companies, so I know a little bit about this space. But it's a difficult space to operate in. It's something that's got a very, very long-term position of profitability. You've got to wait there a long way to get the money back on that one. But it could deteriorate the presence that we have of fuel oil in the region, which is really the main beauty of Fujairah.
Sharif, what are the other big infrastructure plays that are happening within the context of Fujairah, UAE? I mean, we understand there is a railroad to come to Fujairah. You talked about the airport. What are the possibilities of its opening? What other big infrastructure plays are already underway that we should know a little bit about? Again, you're on mute, sorry.
Get the t-shirt.
Yeah, I know. There we go.
Yes. Yeah, I think the most important what we are looking for today is basically the railroad that will come both for cargo as well as passenger. That's no doubt. And I think overdue, maybe or close, maybe 1 year or two. The airport development there is happening. I think this is indirectly there is a development at the airport. Rather than that, I know 1 or 2 hotel resorts are there again. It's just, but nothing in particular. We are looking as a free zone. We are maybe within 1 month, 2 months, we start a big manufacturing unit with about 3,500 employees. So which will be due to operate in June, latest June 2020. So basically that's where is the problem is everything is being individual, and number 2 is not advertised properly or not being campaigned. Is
there more that could be done for attracting more investment into quarrying?
Yes. I mean the quarry also the question also with quarry that they have identified that themselves, no more quarries, more of manufacturing, more of a processing. And I think we're talking about processing 2 things, either discovering of any type of mineral, which it requires again an input of the government. That's what we have seen. The government has to take initiatives. It's not an oil well. You bring a company and give them a concession and say take whatever expense. It requires more challenges. I think that's then number 2. They want to manufacture rocks, which is again except for at the moment cement and normal rocks. So The talk is there, Sean. You are right for aggregate and rocks to do something, but the agenda looks good. But the
Well, maybe
formality,
that's the integration that Neil mentions about LNG for power generation for industrial development in the Emirate, that connectivity makes the opportunity.
True, true. So you and I think also now the power is, we are fine today, but I think also that's another requirement. I think, and I don't, maybe we little bit taking it a different direction. I think also there is one major factor is there, Sean, that there is a local government regulations and federal, and some local governments try to be very much surrendered to the federal, and some laws it doesn't support. I mean, more of security, more of transparency, more of involvement. So this, I think, also needs a little bit of liberation, more of the federal government interference. I mean, some projects now, it has to be collectively. I think these things, we need to look at it. I think refinery is good, but today we need more to people. You see, business.
There's no doubt, obviously, as Tony mentioned, there's a lot of refining capacity in the world as a whole, never mind in the region, and it's something that we need to think about. Martin, I want to bring you in and give you the last word here today. A chance to comment on the survey result. I don't know if Irene can bring up that last survey question for Martin to look at, but your thoughts on some of the issues mentioned, and also what I was sort of struck by in the result here. Very little requirement or request for the reclamation of more land in Fujairah.
Right. Yeah, I think on the land side, I think we still have quite a bit of land on the voice that is available. I think that has been prepared for a refinery plan years ago. That land is still there. And as we speak, quite a sizable piece of land is being reclaimed. The rocks that are coming out of the caverns for ADNOC's underground storage are going straight into this, across the road. So maybe people are aware of that. On the floating storage on the LNG, it's high on our agenda. I think the fact that we don't have it yet doesn't mean we're not interested in. Obviously, we are. We have almost a weekly inquiries for LNG, mostly indeed on the floating storage. So we
for what use or what purpose are people looking for?
Mostly bunkering. I think bunkering opportunity, and as well as STS operations. We of course carefully study those, but what we like to see, at least what we're trying to achieve with finding the right partners who are also willing to invest at least small scale onshore as well. At least include in their proposal a jetty, maybe some small scale onshore, and combine that with a floater as a starting point. So maybe not the full scale onshore one, that's of course a major investment, but the combination of the two is actually what we prefer at this point in time. If we not succeed with that, maybe we change our view on that and we go purely for floating. We have to see. The fact is, because we have 3 major power plants, 2 already, 1 under construction. And although the view of the UAE is to serve perhaps these power plants with natural gas, which as the UAE claims in 10 years time, we are self-sufficient on that. The drive for an LNG terminal there might be not as strong. That can still be, of course, a secondary source. And then combine this with what already mentioned, industrial demand, as well as debunkering. So hence, we like to see some more, sustainable investment in LNG, rather than just a floater who, as Neil mentioned, might just pick up and leave at any time.
Okay, well, that seems like the last word today, Martin. I'd like to thank this panel. And take the opportunity to close out the session. I would like to start just to review the survey questions that we had today. And if we could start with the first survey question, Irene, that gave us the outlook for Fujairah. How close is Fujairah to a global energy trading hub? Halfway, well beyond halfway, and can see the finish line, and already is. So a lot of optimism to take from that view, the 100 or so people that have joined us on the workshop today. The second question we asked, which was in relevance to taking advantage of this new position as being a benchmark location, good support there for attracting more oil trading firms. Of course, Aramco Trading is the first mover there, and they are our partner today at this workshop, and again, we thank them. Accelerate the creation of a Fujairah oil products benchmark, which is something Dave Ernsberger talked about, as Platts have been building a lot of the plumbing for that to happen. Facilitate onshore crude oil trading, which of course was mentioned as the connectivity between the ADNOC infrastructure and the commercial infrastructure, which will be completed at the end of this year, will create that opportunity. The next question we asked, which was in relation to some of the next steps as a global energy hub, making the port as flexible and as efficient as possible, just tipping out, surfacing as many data points as possible, and perhaps they are all the one thing: more flexibility, more data, more transparency. And as Tony mentioned, which is sort of not to be overlooked, the idea of customer service and what that means in all of its three-dimensionality. And the last question we asked for the survey, which wrapped us up, was in relation to the hard infrastructure. Refinery still seems to be getting some attention, although we are hearing voices through the course of the workshop that perhaps that's not the ideal next step. Floating regasification unit is something that, as Martine mentioned, the port is looking at. There is still a keen interest in LNG in Fujairah, and this is one of the ways of bringing it ashore, as Neil mentioned, with great flexibility, that it can be taken away at any point in which it no longer seems to be fit for purpose. So that is a quick overview of our session. I'd like to thank all of our speakers this year at the Fujairah IP Week workshop. Of course, virtually this year, but thanks that it was virtually, we were able to accommodate over 100 people, whereas if it was physical, it's only got a capacity usually of about 30 to 40. So that's one of the advantages of going virtual. But thank you to all our speakers and all of the insights and advice that you've shared today for Fujairah to consider in its roadmap forward. We'll certainly be capturing all of the salient points and putting it together in an executive summary that we can share with everybody. But again, thank you. Have a safe day, have a productive day, and we look forward to catching up with everybody, as we said, in Fujairah on October 5th for the annual forum. And hopefully everybody will be comfortable and able to travel by after the summer. All the best, everybody. Thank you for your time.